of the general overview of religious emblems. I'm going to take just a moment to introduce you to your presenters today. Our first presenter will be Jason Nolan. Jason is an Eagle Scout and Vigil Honor member. He serves on the National Religious Relationships Committee, and he is the CEO of Pray Publishing. As a former Cub Master and Den leader, he knows how difficult it is for a leader to introduce and promote duty to God in the unit. His hope is that the resources available will lead to better programming and promotion of this important part of the oath and the law. And our second presenter is Chris Carabinas. Chris is an Eagle Scout and father of 2 Eagle Scouts. He is the chair of the United Methodist Committee on Scouting, the UMCOS in the North Georgia Conference of the United Methodist Church. He is the lead Methodist representative on the Atlanta Area Council's Religious Relations Committee. He has taught COR training with an emphasis on duty to God for 10 years and has led or promoted Pray programs for over 20 years. And I will turn it over to you guys for your presentation.
And Jason.
Or I can keep talking, but I don't know which one of who's going first.
Jason is.
Perfect.
And Jason, is your mic working?
I think so.
Oh, there it is.
There you are.
There
Okay.
you go.
Wonderful.
All right. Sorry about that. Thank you all very much for joining us today. We are going to go ahead and mute everybody to start with. We will open it back up for questions at the end, answer as many as we can within the time we have. But please know that there is also a chat function where you can share those questions, and we'll be monitoring that throughout. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So thank you very much and welcome to our presentation today on religious emblems. I hope that you will learn something new about the religious emblems programs and take that home. But more importantly, I hope to challenge you to share religious emblems within your units, your districts, your councils, as a solution to the duty to God component of the Cub Scout Adventure requirements, Scouts BSA Scout Spirit requirements, and for the Venturing Trust Award. So there is a little bit of history that's an integral part of scouting. Lord Baden-Powell stated the importance of religion. No man is much good unless he believes in God and obeys his laws. So every scout should have a religion. Religion seems a very simple thing. First, love and serve God. Second, love and serve your neighbor. That was from the Scouting for Boys in 1908. And then in the BSA, very first handbook for boys, volume 1, 1911, no boy can grow into the best kind of citizenship without recognizing his obligation to God. Obviously, in those times, the membership has changed, and so certainly there are pieces of that that need to be revised and edited to be current. But the point is that these are the reasons why the oath opens with a commitment to God and the law closes with reverent. So where do religious emblems fit into advancement programs? Beginning in January 1, 2016, all ranks include a duty to God requirement. Every Cub Scout adventure has a duty to God requirement. The option to earn the religious emblem of their faith would satisfy one of the optional requirements. Religious emblems could, but are not required to satisfy Scoutmaster conferences and the Scout Spirit component. And finally, as I mentioned, venturers must earn the emblem of their faith in order to complete the Trust Award. So these are the religious emblems reinforce the BSA values. And some interesting facts. Nationally, 71% of all chartered organizations are faith-based. And the religious emblems programs help and or improve relationships with the faith-based chartered partners. And there's some really interesting facts that have come out over the years according to the BSA studies. One, that 17% of all scouts have their first exposure to church or to a congregation through the scouting movement. 50% of all scouts only enter a faith-based institution when attending a scout meeting. And young people who earn a religious emblem of their faith tend to be registered longer in scouting's programs. Again, these are all seeds to help a scout begin their own faith journey. And while seemingly simple, the open doors of a congregation for meetings, a scout zone, interreligious service, on a campout, the offering of grace or prayer before meals, and the introduction of religious emblems programming, they all serve to help young people identify their belief set at home or develop them on their own. And again, scouting can serve within a lot of different faith traditions as youth ministry or religious education. So what are the religious emblems programs? These programs are developed by the individual faith traditions, faith groups, and the denominations to encourage their members to grow stronger in their faith. The BSA, through a Memorandum of Understanding and Partnership, has approved of these programs and allows them to be worn on the official uniform, but the emblems are administered by the various religious groups and not the BSA. Most of the medals that are earned are worn above the left pocket, and it also, the religious emblem qualifies youth for the universal religious square knot. This is the Duty to God brochure. Raise your hand if you've seen it before. I hope most of you have. But it is a great tool for religious emblems information. And while it's mostly available online now, there is going to be a revision coming from the national office, but it contains information on many of the different faith traditions, including the contact information and the awards that are available to youth and adults. Additionally, it has a frequently asked questions section of it that answers the most common questions about religious emblems. So the Universal Religious Square Knot is available to all who have earned the religious emblem of their faith. It is worn across over the left pocket. It's worn by the purple cloth with the silver knot is the youth emblem, and it is worn throughout the career. So it's worn by youth and adult members who earned the award as a youth and have completed the requirements for that emblem of their faith. Additionally, the purple knot on the silver cloth may be worn by adult members and is presented for faithful service as an adult leader. And we will also get into the adult awards later. But just real quick, if you paid attention to the graph 2 slides ago, did you know that according to BSA National Supply, the Universal Religious Award Knot for Youth has the largest annual volume annually? Nearly 38,000 are sold on an annual basis, and that is more than the Eagle Scout Knot. Most religious emblem programs have more than one level, and even though there is only one square knot, with the fact that most programs have more than one program in a level, you can earn a special device to indicate when you have earned your religious emblem. So for instance, you'll see they may have earned the religious emblem, the knot, as a tiger cub, but if they completed part of a religious emblem program as a wolf or a bear, they can wear the additional device to show that they earned it as a Cub Scout. Of course, the Weeblo or Arrow of Light pin that's there on the second one. And then finally, they have the Boy Scout option, or I'm sorry, Scouts BSA and the venturing emblem as part of that level as well. So the Scout leader is not the instructor for the religious emblems. These are enhancement programs, additional programs developed by partners outside of the BSA, but recognized by the BSA. Parents and guardians should decide whether or not their Scout will participate in the programs, and as such, Scouts should earn the religious emblems for their own faith. Parents and religious leaders should help a Scout earn the religious emblem. But again, this is not necessarily a badge that is earned together as a unit, but these are opportunities for Scouts and families to work on something together and to know their clergy better and to become more involved in their congregation. So most of the emblems have the same 4 similar steps. And again, these are going to be presented as part of the Duty to God brochure. But first and foremost, youth members must obtain the specific booklet for their religion. Some of them are going to be available for download. Some of them are going to be available for purchase through their scout shop or trading post, or online through the organization that is responsible for the religious emblem of their faith tradition. Again, you can find that information on the Duty to God brochure, or you can search by faith at praypub.org. Each scout will need their own workbook to document their progress and to share with the lay leader or the member of the clergy who they're responsible to interact with as part of the completion of that. Additionally, some faith traditions and religions are going to offer adult manuals for counselors, or the teacher's manual, if you will, as well as an opportunity for adult mentors, which may be the parent, the guardian, or someone at home that can work along with the scout at the same time and complete that faith work as part of the process.
Hey, Jason, got a question here I'd like to share with you, if you could.
Sure.
So Paul is asking, can the knot be awarded to a scout that earned an emblem or equivalent from their faith institution that is not represented on the Duty to God flyer? Or does it have to be one of the emblems listed on the flyer?
So the knot should be earned and completed while they were a member of Scouts BSA or the Boy Scouts of America. Now, it is possible that if they were in Girl Scouting and transferred over, or they are registered in both organizations, that they may very well have received the same award. So for instance, the Pray Awards cross Girl Scouting and Boy Scouting. However, in the case, for example, in the case of the Jewish Emblem series, there is a separate organization responsible for the Jewish emblems for Girl Scouting, and a separate organization responsible for Jewish emblems for Boy Scouting. So in that case, they could not wear them across. So it really depends on the award, the emblem, and what the organization has prepared in advance for them to be awarded and recognized. Does that help answer it?
That's great. And another question that's sort of derivative of that is it appropriate for a youth to learn about a faith tradition other than his or her own by going through its religious emblem program?
So there will be some faiths who have that option available to them, but remember, the intention of the emblems and generally the intention of the memorandum of understanding is that they connect their personal faith experience with their personal scouting experience. But again, however, there are some faiths, and you'd have to check into them, that will allow you to do some discovery and completion of those emblems in advance as well.
Great, thanks.
And a portion of that question, Jason, was also about if they're a faith group that isn't recognized as a MOU, etc., with the Boy Scouts, so they aren't on that Duty to God flyer. If they earn one of their faith's religious emblems, does it count? That angle of the question too.
Yeah, so there are exceptions made, and they would need to send information to the BSA's national office and the relationships division so that they can make sure that those are approved. There may be, because of past information or past differences. Remember, the BSA is a private organization, and so there may have been some stipulations in the past that may have prevented that. We know that there are groups out there that have different emblems that they have prepared that are not recognized by the BSA because there is not a memorandum of understanding currently in place. So I would encourage them to reach out to the BSA Relationships Division and they can submit a request. And again, there are a lot of different faiths out there that are parts of other traditions. And so there may be opportunities that they just haven't come across to develop that relationship with at this time.
And we do have some new leaders up on the National Religious Relationships Committee. So if you haven't submitted it for a few years, etc., feel free to resubmit it. Sometimes they get lost in cyberspace, and sometimes they don't connect all the way to us. And we try to get answers back as quickly as we can to different faith groups when they did get them to us.
So Jason, we'll try to hold the questions for a few minutes, let you get through a few
problem.
more slides.
Okay. Step 2, again, parents and guardians are encouraged to play a very important role with this. Many of them require, as I mentioned, a mentor program or have available a mentor program, but they should be working alongside. Some programs, as I mentioned a minute ago, faiths require participants to be official members of that particular congregation or religious institution, which may prevent others from participating in that or learning about that faith. Age and grade requirements will vary from faith tradition to faith tradition, and each program will establish its own guidelines as to who may serve as counselor. Some programs, some faith traditions require clergy to serve as counselors. Others may delegate that to lay ministry, religious educators, or to parents even if they will. Step 3, families should talk to their clergy and make sure that they share the booklet before beginning any program. One of the things that we find is sometimes a lot of individuals assume that their faith leader probably has an idea of the program, when the reality is most of them do not. They're not aware of it because they may not have had scouting experience as a youth, or they may not have been approached by it before. So make sure that the clergy receive and see the booklet before beginning any program. And that's the point where families should have that conversation and talk about who will serve as the counselor or the teacher for that. It should be completed under the auspices of that congregation and that faith tradition. And again, many programs will require the signature of the local religious leader or clergy. The final step that's similar across all of the different faiths is that, of course, the youth member needs to complete the requirements, obtain the signatures, and follow the instructions to order the emblem. Note that the emblems are not available from the local council store or scout shop. As I mentioned earlier, they're administered by the faith tradition if they have a primary church body or a delegated organization that serves in the role of administrator for that emblems programming. So they're not available in the scout shop, and they should be presented at any time of the year. They can be earned all year long and should be presented as part of a meaningful ceremony, preferably at the member's religious institution. And of course, the most popular time of year to recognize young people with receiving their religious emblem is part of Scout Sabbath or Scout Sunday in February in celebration of Anniversary Week. Adult awards. Often overlooked are the opportunity to recognize adults for the faithful service to their own faith and to young people. So a scout obviously is reverent. They all take care of that as part of the 12th point of the scout law. And there are, just like in any other situation, adult volunteers who go above and beyond to help scouts on their own personal spiritual journey. And we often overlook those opportunities to recognize them, but also want to make sure folks know that in addition to receiving an emblem or an award in service to their own faith, they can also sometimes be recognized for the service to the faith of their chartered partner or to youth of another faith. So congregations are encouraged to use these adult recognitions to support their volunteers. And of course, it too can be presented at any time of the year as part of a meaningful ceremony. And I mentioned a moment ago that, not all awards require adults practice that faith, but for service to a faith tradition or congregation through scouting. So for example, in the Lutheran faith, the Lutheran Servant of Youth Award is specifically designated for those adult volunteers who offer exemplary service over a period of time to a youth or to the Boy Scout troop or Cub Scout pack that is chartered to that Lutheran church. Then they have the Lamb Award that is specifically aligned for adults who serve their own faith, the Lutheran faith. However, I've seen adult awards presented across multiple faiths. I've seen the Jewish shofar presented to adults outside of the Jewish faith, as well as the awards of the Islamic faith. So it really depends on the faith, that tradition, and how their awards and adult award program is set up. But again, adult awards, go ahead.
No, I thought you were done. I have a related question. So Tom in New Hampshire is asking, do clergy instructors have to be registered and YPT certified?
They do not, because they are presenting those emblems as part of their faith. However, in a one-on-one process, so again, most awards or emblems are presented and worked through with direct work between a representative of their congregation and the youth. So they will need to make sure that at any time, in addition to the person presenting, that they have an adult or guardian present with them so that they don't violate it. But again, that's why the mentor program in a lot of different faiths is encouraged, so that they have an adult along with them. If they're doing it as part of a class and it's connected to it, again, want to make sure that even though they're not registered, that any of the BSA youth protection policies are being upheld and in place, that there's a minimum of 2 leaders present, and again, a member of the clergy to supervise that. And you'll find that a lot of congregations and churches are well prepared, because their youth protection policies are going to be very similar to the BSA, and in advance they will make sure that those minimum requirements are met in terms of interaction and adult leaders present. The nomination process, and again, it is a nomination for the adult awards in the religious emblem category. It should not be something that they seek. The award should seek them, if you will. So again, adult awards are by nomination only. They generally require a minimum number of years of service and a particular service required. Most require the completed nomination form, a resume of their activities, and letters of recommendation, along with signatures from the local council and the religious institution. The forms are all available through the religious body or the affiliate organization that supervises the distribution and administration of those particular awards.
Is there a typical minimum number of years service to qualify?
It depends on the faith tradition. Some are 3, some are 5, but generally most of them are 3 or 5. There is a national award to recognize those adults who have demonstrated exemplary service to youth, and that is the National Duty to God Award. And generally, no more than 4 recipients each year from local councils, the national committees, and the general membership of the BSA. They are required to be an active and registered member of their local council or the national council. They do require 10 or more years leadership and service to scouting through one's faith tradition. They should have already earned the Faith Appropriate Adult Award or comparable recognition from their faith tradition. And these awards are part of the BSA's National Annual Meeting and are presented as part of a much larger ceremony during the Duty to God breakfast event. And that application is available online. So if you were to simply do a search for National Duty to God Award, you would find the application there. And generally those committees meet in January and February of the year that the National Annual Meeting will occur. So for instance, this year in 2020, the nominees and recipients were selected in February and notified to be a part of the National Annual Meeting in May. There are a couple of other ways that I want to point out how religious emblems are promoted and how religious emblems play a part within the local scouting programs. So first of all, if you haven't had a chance, the chaplain and chaplain aid training is now online. It is a great piece of training and works well in Scouts BSA, especially if the chartered organization of the troop is a faith-based institution. A couple things you ought to know: that units are likely going to have scouts of many different faiths. They're interreligious, if you will, and so some knowledge of where to find information in religious emblems is helpful. The chaplain aid requirements do include now help and promotion of religious emblems. But in addition, the chaplain and chaplain aid should help provide planning worship experiences, so Scouts own worship, service projects and opportunities, especially if they're chartered to a faith-based institution, potentially maintaining the unit's religious emblem chart, and of course, if they're at a faith-based institution, serving as the coordinator for Scout Sunday or Sabbath services. So raise your hand if you're aware of the religious emblem coordinator and the positions that are recognized within the BSA at the council, district, and unit level. Okay, good. We've got some of you out there. So the religious emblems coordinator was developed roughly about 10 years ago, and the intent was to help continue to better connect faith work and the religious emblems with the units. Again, go back to where I talked about 71% currently of all units within the BSA are chartered to faith-based institutions. And so while secular in its approach, and the BSA doesn't say that you have to have a specific faith or have a specific faith belief, they do recognize the importance of the connection to religious organizations. So the Council of Religious Emblems Coordinator could work closely with a Council Religious Relationships Committee or Relationships Committee in general. But recognize that the primary function of the religious relationships is to serve the faith committee, while the role of the REC, the Religious Emblems Coordinator, is the promotion of religious emblems. But they should work very closely together, because those congregations and faith communities that are conducting religious emblem programs should be connected to the local council in a better way to help support council activity. The District Religious Emblems Coordinator is a district level position appointed by the district chair and sets their goals with the district program chair. They should be in place to help disseminate unit information to units through recharter packets, roundtables, camporees, or other events. And then recruit presenters to make presentations on emblems. They should seek clergy of chartered partners, leaders of units that promote religious emblems, chaplains, etc. It is a great way to build if you're looking for developing services at a district camporee or at district events, to be able to engage those folks and help widen the breadth of those who are impacting scouting at a local level. And finally, the Unit Religious Emblems Coordinator is appointed by the unit committee chair and should serve on a local unit committee. They should be able to work closely with the chaplain in the Scouts BSA or on their own in the case of the Cub Scouts back, to acquaint youth and leaders with religious emblems programs and what's available for the particular faiths. They should be able to provide families and clergy with an orientation to the religious emblem programs and urge youth to earn the emblem of their faith. Again, we talk about in Cub Scouting and in Boy Scouting using those religious emblems to help connect and to complete the faith experience as part of their advancement program. And again, finally, the Unit Religious Emblem Coordinator should help promote religious emblems similar to as they might be promoted for unit advancement. So those are all of the slides we have. I would encourage you to follow back up. I will leave this slide up for a while as we go through some of the discussion points here and to talk, but those are probably the most important links for you. They include a direct link to the BSA information page, the Duty to God chart if you're looking for it. There's a couple of different places you can find it. They have memorandum of understanding, as well as information about connection to specific faith partners that you can find there. Would encourage you to reach out to praypub.org/BSA. We have a microsite that is general in its composition, not specific to all the Protestant emblems necessary. And then in addition, if you were looking for ways to support the youth in your units or your district or your council, Pray does offer a search by faith tool, and when they just simply enter that particular tradition or denomination, and from there, any link or information available regarding that faith will be presented as part of that search. So, Chris, do we want to get into some of the questions here?
Yeah, we've got a lot of them, as you might think about. And some of us have been answering, and some of them we've sort of been working in, and some we've sort of saved. So Matt from Richmond Hill, Georgia, is asking, where does a faith-based organization get the BSA awards for God and Church?
So the specific God and Church emblems are maintained by Pray. So if you want to reach out to Pray, info@praypub.org, we can help answer that question, or you can simply search the website praypub.org and find that information for the God and Church.
Okay, and then also somebody is asking if we could put these links into the chat room, so I'm going to take care of that as we're talking here.
Okay.
So just stay tuned.
Great idea.
Hopefully this is not a mess, but let's try it. Yeah, it's a long cut and paste, but it's all there, guys. Okay. Somebody answered a question about where do you get the patch? And I'm guessing, Mike, since you asked that, is that the patch for this event? I don't think it's a patch for a religious emblem. So Mike, if you could clarify that, that would be helpful.
Chris, I was the one that answered that, and I took it as, where do you get the religious emblem coordinator patches? They're a trifle hard to find, but at least you can order them from scoutstuff.org.
Yes, you can.
Okay, thanks, John. Yeah, there's a pretty active chat room, so it's sometimes the questions get separated.
Okay. Chris, any others?
You clarified that, because I looked it up and it's on Pray Pub site.
Yeah, Pray doesn't have the emblem. We have information about the emblems.
Okay, yeah, just listed the patches. That's why I was asking.
And Marie asked a question. She said this class description for this class said that a new tool is being developed. So I'm not sure what the class description said. I have to go back and look at the flyer, I suppose. Is there a new tool to be announced or being developed?
That was about the handout, the Duty of God handout that we're in the process of updating.
Perfect. Yeah. And so Jason talked about that up front. Good.
Chris, we've got a couple that have raised their hand. Let's see here. I don't know how to get to them. Oh,
okay.
It just disappeared. I think they want to be called on.
Rick from Ohio, let me unmute you if I can. No, I can't. Why can't I? Oh, there I can. There you go. Unmute. So Rick, I'm trying to unmute you, but somebody is unmuting my unmute. Okay, Rick, can you talk?
Yeah, I really didn't have a question.
I'm sorry, we're having trouble hearing you. Can you speak closer to the mic?
He asked for people to raise a hand earlier, and I was just using that to raise a hand.
Okay, so that just came up again.
Got it. Okay.
And Paula Popper has one. Paula, do you have a question?
Yeah, so when you were talking about the emblems and they need to use, every scout needs a workbook and whatnot. This spring I ran into a number of situations because I was teaching online. So on one hand, I copied a couple of the first few pages so that while we could begin our classes while they're waiting for their books to come in. But I also ran into, then when they're writing in the books, how am I supposed to see this? So we've done about 5 different things trying to find the best way to make that work. And none of them were great. One of the better ones was from other merit badges, if I had a fillable kind of PDF, that was one way of doing it. The other, I was simply going to take the questions and retype them into a format in my Google Classroom where they could fill them in directly into my classroom. But then they're not paying for the workbook. So then I had the question of, do I now need to pay per student even if they are not purchasing a workbook from you? And I didn't want, all these questions were coming up, and I had started a dialogue with somebody in your office. And then I knew I was coming here. So I figured I'd just wait until I come through this week and see if anybody here knew the answer or could suggest, because I know it's a new situation. So how might we address this?
So are you talking specifically about the Pray emblems?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
teaching 4 of the Pray emblems right now.
Okay, wow, good for you. Thank you very much. So first of all, let me speak in general regarding the Pray emblems. So, which I'm certainly qualified to do. We know that obviously with the surprise of this, and the shutdown, that it put us in a difficult position. Pray does not currently have digital versions of the books available. There is an option online now, though, for those who are going to make sure that they stick to it, but they can, when they register, you can pay a book duplication fee, and it's $3 along with the registration. So that is one method to do it. I would tell you that we are in the process of developing it. There are a lot of different complicated things regarding tax structure and organizational identification that we'll have to change, as well as how we develop digital booklets so that they can be included. So I do understand, and that we are willing to work with those that are out there. I do know, though, for instance, for the Jewish faith, they can download those emblems.
Right.
They can download those booklets, and that's the case with some others. And again, I can also tell you that the National Catholic Committee on Scouting, they are also in the process of developing booklets online as well. In fact, I think they're getting ready to roll out Adultari Day and test that in a digital format where it's a functional workbook online. So those processes are in place.
All right. So right now I'm teaching the whole God and series for the independent Protestant. I teach the Jewish one too, but I also handle that separately. But for this, if I were to essentially replicate and do Scouts Honor, or and ask my families to pay essentially for that, although I have some families who's asked for subsidized because they can't come up with that as well. And so we've had this sort of ongoing, like, how does this get handled? If I were in a church building teaching this, or the church was funding this, I would say buy a stack, I pass them out, you charge families or not, however you want. That's how I'd handle it in person. Once I'm dealing with this online and stuff is coming either out of my own pocket, and I'm mailing things out if I've got an extra for somebody to be subsidized, or I'm scanning and copying things, I'm like, okay, this is a little crazy. And I'm just trying to think going forward, there's got to be a better way than what I'm doing.
Sure. Right now, off the top of my head, I don't know that in terms of the Pray emblems that this might be the best platform to answer that. But what
Okay.
I would do is you can reach me at jasonin@praypub.org, and I'd be happy to set aside some time and we can talk through it and see how we can best serve you and meet your needs to serve those young people.
Okay.
Sound
Awesome.
good?
Yep.
Okay.
Great. So Jason, I have another question here. Are the counselor guides being updated, specifically the Catholic ones? They're very text heavy. Do you know anything about those?
I don't know anything specific about the Catholic guidebooks for the counselor. We can find out. Again, drop me a note. I don't know if anybody from the National Catholic Committee is on here, but drop me a note again, jasonin@praypub.org, and we will find out the answer for you.
Okay, have another question here. Does Pray have workbook in slides so I could run religious sessions virtually? I'm hoping to start a Catholic Adultari Day course via Zoom ASAP, so I guess she's asking two questions there. So does Pray have workbook in slides so you can run the sessions virtually?
Yeah, so we are starting the process of working with and testing out in a couple of different places from the Pray perspective, what that might look like. We know that we have had some councils who have done emblems programs, and we've had clergy who've done emblem programs online throughout this. So we are working closely with them and talking to them about what have been their best practices, their best experiences, and how we might develop tips and hints that will be for those folks and serve them better. And that includes materials that we might need to develop in terms of a toolkit that they might be able to share. So no, we don't right now. I don't believe the National Catholic Committee does right now, but are they in development and consideration? Absolutely.
Are you looking for beta testers?
Or subject matter experts?
Well, this would be a great crowd to say, look, if you want to test it, we
Absolutely.
need 1 or 2 testers.
Let us know.
Jason N at praypub.org, huh?
Correct.
Okay, great. Question, let me, okay, great. So people are chatting back and forth, answering each other's questions with the links and stuff. So
Awesome.
we don't need to cover that here. Okay. Other questions that you guys would like to ask Jason? Really good conversation going on the sides here. Or not on the side, but in the chat room.
Yeah, Chris, I've got a question.
Yeah, hey,
Jim.
Go ahead.
Jason, could you talk at a high level about the new Vanguard organization and their, what they're going to be doing with Emblems, just to kind of educate the group? And again, this is something at 20,000 feet, because I don't expect you to know the details.
Sure. So VISA, or the Vanguard International Scouting Association, is the scouting group that has the permission to operate in support of Latter-day Saint youth and adults moving forward in a religious emblem and recognition program. If you have an opportunity, I would encourage you to visit on the Duty to God Facebook page. There was a great discussion similar to this about the Latter-day Saints and the VISA program, but it does include emblems for Cub Scout youth as well as Boy Scout youth, and they have an emblem program for adults as well. So much like the others, there are requirements for them to complete. There are activities for Latter-day Saint youth and adults to participate in and get signed off. What is unique about it is that those folks can be signed off by any scout leader, just with the proof that they have achieved that. They expect that most of those leaders who will be signing off will be parents. However, they know that and fully expect that in some cases, it may need to be a scout leader who is not a Latter-day Saint. So that permission is in there. But again, I would encourage you, if you're keenly interested in that, there's a lot of great information from the VISA, the Vanguard International Scouting Association, about their emblems. One of them was part of this Virtual Interfaith Week. So does that cover it, Jim? Silence is golden. We'll assume that we're good. Chris, what else do we have?
Lots of good chatter. A lot of Catholic participants on here too. Got a lot of people who want to beta test any new Catholic program. So I did a screenshot, and I'm going to share that with Jim Weiskircher, and get the contact information from Amanda and share it with him. That's awesome. Okay, so David Smith raised his hand. So let me find you, David, and unmute you, or you can unmute yourself. Whoops. Go ahead, David. I unmuted when you were muting, or vice versa. Try it again.
Okay. Actually, it's only Dave, not David, and it's female, not male. Mistake all the time. I just have a question, because I know that, we're not really supposed to ask the denomination or the choice of faith for our members. And as a religious emblem coordinator, how do you know how you're supposed to support your families? Or as a chaplain aide, how to tailor the program, chaplain and a chaplain aide, how to tailor the faith programs within your unit or your district?
Sure. So that's a really good question about ways to engage them, obviously outside of asking them directly. I think one of the things that you can do that is particularly helpful is to have a general conversation to talk about religious emblems and where it goes. So it may be a presenter at the district level, whether it's part of a roundtable, online or in person, or and supplying the link, or if they're still available in your council, the Duty to God brochures. But do the same thing at the unit level. Part of the, again, go back to my experience as a Cub Master and a Den Leader. One of the things that we did is when we were starting to get close and talk about programming and talk about Scout Sunday or Scout Sabbath, that we had a conversation with our leaders and talked to them about religious emblems, because most of them were not comfortable with answering questions about outside of their own faith and how to handle that. So providing the resources to them up front about where they can find information and sharing that with the membership, whether that be in print if they're still available to you, or through the links, making sure that they're educated about how those are used often answers a lot of those questions. And then finally, as a den leader, always made sure that I communicated with my adults. So even before there were all the tools that are out there now, I still followed up with email and links about the requirements, what we did, and what we could expect from them to complete it. So they always included those links as well. Does that help answer the question, Dave?
That helps some. I know that we have a boy in our unit who has dietary restrictions for religious reasons, but the committee chair is unwilling to share beyond that, and I don't even know which boy it is.
That's understandable. Again, it's simply identifying. They have to self-identify, if you will, but giving them the tools to do that is probably the best way to maintain the, if that's their desire or the Scoutmaster's desire to keep the faith personal. That's probably the best way to do it.
Right, and here it's, like I say, it's the committee chairman, and I don't know if it's just because she does that, or if it is the choice of the family. We also have boys who have food allergies, but we have also not been told which boys have which food allergies.
Right.
So it just is kind of a tight situation. It's like nobody knows what we can do. But it is, it's hard to, because as district roundtable chairman, I can give an overview of the Religious Emblems program, which I did before the shutdown. And that's great, but if people don't ask me specific questions about specific groups, I can't give them any other information.
Sure. Yeah, like I said, the search by faith tool on the Pray website is good. And then of course, just the BSA general information under awards and religious awards at scouting.org is a good place as well. So yeah,
Okay.
Do your best, right?
Right.
So, Jason, I got another question here. Is there a scholarship offered for completing all 4 levels of a religious emblem program?
So they're not specifically through so for instance, through pay. The Eastern Orthodox Committee on Scouting does offer scholarships for those youth who have completed their highest awards, the Alpha and Omega, for instance. And so there are others similar to that, but it may not necessarily be for specifically completing all of them. I would encourage you, if that's something of interest, to reach out direct to those partners or the associations who have been authorized to do so about what scholarship information they may have.
Great.
The Catholic Church has an excellent scholarship program, and I had one of my boys who completed all 4 medals get several $1,000s. It's not a requirement to complete 4, but it is strongly encouraged for those who want to apply for. It's about $20,000 a year.
Thank you, Nora.
Wow. Other questions? You can either unmute yourself and speak, or just type it in the chat room.
Could you pull up the slides for step 1 and step 2 real quick, just for a second?
Sure, absolutely. Let's see here. Bear with us for a moment there. Oops. Sorry, I turned into one of my kids there and I just started mad clicking. Okay, there we go. All right, and we'll move on to step 2. Are we okay to do that? Okay.
Jason, a personal experience that taught me to caution those of parents that I talked to, because it happened to me. I walked into my own church and said, let me present what this religious emblems is all about. And before it was said and done, they said, oh, well, since you understand it, you are now the counselor.
Right.
I try to make sure that people know and understand that, because parents can go in and be speaking with their clergy and be suddenly surprised.
I've offered to go in, like if a parent feels like they're not able to talk to their clergy about it, I've offered to go in with them or set up a time to talk, to introduce the program to the clergy, and at least get their buy-in that they'll be willing to like officially oversee and appoint someone to be the counselor on it. My experience is that the youth going to get the books first is not what happens. It is usually parent driven, particularly on the younger years, but the parents get the books on behalf of the youth. It's very rarely the youth getting it first. That first step really kind of never seems to work. That somebody else is doing those pieces. That's just my experience with it.
Well, sometimes clergy are very familiar with the emblems, and sometimes they're not. And so, yeah, it does depend on their level of experience and the eagerness of the parent to get them going on it. There's certainly 2 factors.
Yep.
So Jason, I got another question for you here.
Sure.
The religious emblem for leaders is submitted by the leader of the local congregation to the local council. Is that correct?
In some cases, yes, it can be the local leader of the congregation. It also can be someone associated with the unit. And then again, it may depend on the award itself. So just pay attention to the requirements. There are signatures required on all of them, and make sure that those are completed in full. But it does not always necessarily have to be the congregational leader in order for them to receive it.
And the big part of that was where you submitted to, because this person was asking to the local council, is maybe going to pray or the Catholic Committee on Scouting, or
yeah,
right?
Correct.
Right. So go ahead, Paula.
I was thinking that I was going to talk with our chair of our Religious Emblems Committee, because that's kind of who runs a lot of this stuff in our council, and discuss with her to identify the members of our Religious Emblems Committee in particular, since we're the ones who are typically, and you know, and recent members, maybe not even those who are necessarily doing it right this moment, but people who've been in the trenches doing this for a while, who has not been nominated for an award, and what awards might they be eligible for based on either what area they're working in, or what, you know, what denomination they belong to, whatever it is, and help the Religious Emblems Committee sort of identify who should get nominated, and then finding somebody, you know, figuring out whatever that path is to get them nominated and take a little greater role, because so many of our charter orgs are so hands off that they would be totally lost if we don't get a lot of these awarded, because, you know, and we've got a lot of people doing a lot of work, and because I don't know, and I think perhaps I was going to talk to the chair. Do you think that's a good idea to talk to the chair of the Religious Emblems Committee and say, hey, can we sort of take at least the first few steps on this to identify who and how on, in
Sure.
terms of
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, I think having a copy of the nomination forms on hand, I know that Pray has a large list of them. Again,
Okay.
you can go back to all of the different faith traditions or the associations responsible. They also will have those things in place. But just as you may do with the Silver Beaver list or with the District Award of Merit list, folks that deserve recognition, having them on a list to ensure that they're nominated when appropriate is never a bad idea.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Well, Jason, it's 3:56, and I believe this room is needed for another place in 4 minutes, so we probably need to go ahead and check out here. So thank you very much for your presentation and your deep knowledge and expertise and your support for everything around the PRAY program in particular.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate the help and support. And again, if there are any questions that we can answer, don't hesitate to reach out. Again, jasonin@praypub.org is probably the best way. But if I don't know the answer off the top of my head, I'm able to touch those folks that do, and we'll make sure that we get the information to you. So bear with us for a couple days, but we will certainly respond, and everybody have a great 4th.
Great. See you guys.
Thank you,
Take
Jason.
care.
Thank you, Chris.